And we will be covering an overview of peer assessment and the role of a peer. We'll be talking to some of our current peer assessors about their experience of peer assessment. We'll have time to answer your questions about being a peer, and give you some more information about how and when to submit your application. Please use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen to ask us questions. Please don't use the chat function for the questions. One of my colleagues will use the chat to post links to handy information and contacts. She has just posted some information there, including our contact details and a link to frequently asked questions on our website. Questions submitted through the Q&A menu at the bottom will be moderated by my colleagues, and if simple to answer, will be answered in writing during the presentation. We will answer other questions following the discussion with our peer assessors. We will answer as many questions as possible. However, some may get missed due to time constraints. If you still have questions after the session, please contact us directly. Our contact details, as I said, will be in the chat. We'll also update our frequently asked questions on our website with answers. So I'd like to start by giving you an overview of peer assessment. Peer assessment and arm's length funding have been guiding principles of how Australia Council awards funding for more than 40 years. For us, a peer could be anyone who has enough knowledge and experience of the arts sector to make a fair and informed assessment of funding applications. Our peers include practising artists, arts workers and industry experts with experience across a wide range of arts practices and parts of the artistic process. Currently, the board of the Australia Council appoints a pool of peers. These peers are our first port of call when we form an assessment panel for our different arts practices. There are 10 panels, one for arts and disability, one for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander arts, for community arts and cultural development, dance, emerging and experimental arts, literature, multi-arts, music, theatre, and visual arts. We refresh the membership of this pool every 3 to 4 years. The terms of most of our current peers ends in May 2021, and that's why we are recruiting a new pool of peers. Membership of our assessment panels isn't fixed. Rather, it rotates each closing date with peers drawn from the pool. We are committed to forming diverse and balanced panels. So we appoint peers who are representative of geography, cultural background, age, gender and ability, as well as arts practice experience. We are seeking applications from people to join our next pool of peer assessors for a 3-year term. So the term will run from mid-2021 until mid-2024. The peers in the pool will assess for one of 3 closing dates for peer assessed funding opportunities each year. The 2 main ones are in February and September, and a smaller closing date in April. The first closing date that the new pool will assess for is in September 2021. During the 3-year term, peers may assess up to 6 times, but it is more likely that you will assess once or twice during your term. We do appoint more peers to the pool than we have opportunities for to make sure that we have capacity to assess the volume of range of applications that we receive. So as a result, we may not be able to offer everyone in the pool an opportunity to assess during their terms, but we strive to make sure we can offer as many as possible and an opportunity to assess. There are 2 parts to the role of a peer assessor. The first happens individually, with all peers appointed to a panel reading through the applications received and scoring them against the assessment criteria. Peers will assess anywhere between 20 to 130 applications, depending on the arts practice and category being assessed, and will have between 3 to 6 weeks to complete that work. Peers access the applications through Council's online application management system, which is the same online portal that you will use to apply to be a peer. The second part of the peer role happens collectively at an assessment meeting, when we bring the panel together to review an initial ranking of applications. Prior to COVID, the meetings were held face-to-face in Sydney and usually lasted 1 to 2 days. The assessment team would coordinate and pay for peers to travel to Sydney, with some peers choosing to participate remotely. Currently, our meetings are held entirely online due to the volatility of travel restrictions and public health advice. So we've had to change our meeting process to work more effectively in a shorter online format. And the feedback that we've had from our peers during that time has helped us to improve the way that we do this. At the assessment meeting, peers finalise the ranked order of applications, with those that best meet the assessment criteria at the top of the list. After the meeting, council staff apply the budget available to the ranked applications, working down the list until the budget is exhausted. An assessment officer is assigned to each assessment panel to support you through all elements of the process. You will be paid a fee for your time, and if travelling interstate or from regional areas, we will organise travel and accommodation for you and provide a travel allowance to cover out-of-pocket expenses if you stay overnight. We can coordinate a range of support to make the process accessible to you. This could include childcare, internet or computer access, support from a carer, interpreters, captioning, audio descriptions, and so on. There's a lot more information about the peer role and the ways that we can support you on our website. So if you have a look at the peer handbook, I think we've just posted a link to that in the chat as well. And lastly, being a peer doesn't stop you from applying for Australia Council funding. In fact, many of our peers tell us that their role has been a valuable learning experience for writing their own grant applications. The restriction to this is that obviously you can't be a peer for the same assessment panel that is considering your own application. We work hard to manage actual and perceived conflicts of interest to ensure a fair and transparent assessment process for our applicants. So that gives you a flavour of what it is to be a peer and how the peer assessment process works. We'll now move on to the panel discussion and audience questions. So just as a reminder, please remember to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions rather than the chat. And you can keep those questions anonymous if you like. Some questions will be answered live in writing, and we'll get to the other ones as we go through. So at this time, I would like to welcome our 3 peers who are joining us. The first is Cobby Eckermann, an award-winning poet based in South Australia who has assessed for our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander arts and literature panels. Ali, can I invite you to join us? Hi. Is there anything you'd like to say just to start, Ali?
It's a privilege to be here. I am speaking from Nadgeri country in the mid-north of South Australia. I've been very fortunate to be a peer assessor many times, and I look forward to sharing that knowledge. My physical description, I've got a white shirt on with birds on it, shoulder length hair, and the background behind me is a pale cream colour. And I'm wearing glasses.
You're in good company.
mention my age.
Thanks, Ali. We're also joined by Kevin Ng, who's an artist based in Sydney, working in AV design, theatre and experimental live arts. And Kevin has assessed for our multi-arts panel. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, I think that was must be an older bio actually. Yeah. Hi, I'm Kevin Ng. I'm a man in his 30s. I have dark brown hair and brown eyes. I'm got a grey shirt on with a red vest. I'm currently using a canvas painting as my virtual background. It is a painting of a green grassy hillside bordered by trees with the word Walu in white letters across the mountain by an artist named Jock Alexander. I use he and him as my pronouns. I'm currently actually living on Wiradjuri land in Bathurst, and I was previously based in Sydney on Badjigal land, in southern Sydney, New South Wales specifically. Yeah, and being part of the panels in the last 3 years has been a really big learning experience for me as well, in terms of the process and also learning about how amazing this kind of national community of artists is.
Great. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, Dane Hunnerup, who has a background as a musician, agent, promoter, arts worker, and has assessed for our music panel. However, had left the pool of peers when he came to work with us at Council in the Artist Services team. Hi, Dane.
Hello, everyone. Yes, my name's Dane. I'm a big, balding guy in my early 40s, and I'm coming to you from Meanjin or Brisbane on the land of the Turrbal people.
Thank you, all of you. I'm pretty excited about this conversation. So I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to just start the conversation with, and you'll all have an opportunity to respond to those. And then we'll start picking up some questions that are coming in. I can see trickling in through the Q&A function as well. But I thought I would start with asking you, what is the process of reading and scoring applications like? And what kind of strategies or tips for managing the work that you have? So perhaps we could start with you, Ali.
Sure. You know, when I first started as a peer, I was living in the desert in quite a remote area, and quite young in my career. So at first it felt really daunting. There was a lot of submissions to read. So I knew immediately that it needed a big commitment of time and a big commitment of thought. And I guess I found that reading the submissions initially was amazing. It was so amazing to learn about all these different arts projects happening across the country that I actually needed to rest that, sleep on it, if you like, for a couple of days, and then return without the overwhelm and amazement to begin the scoring process. I guess, you know, it reminded me of a project that that I just needed to really dedicate my time and be thorough, and also to be equal in my appraisal as much as humanly possible. Lots of notes, of course. You gain more experience and knowledge as the more you do the peer assessments, but lots of questions at the start to fill in the gaps that maybe you don't know. It was a wonderful experience to be in the room because the peers represented the different language groups coming in from the different states or different regions of Australia. And so then the personal knowledge was coming together. And I found that really beneficial, that often people talking personally about their hometown or their artistic genre would fill in those gaps. It was a wonderful learning experience, and I will reiterate that it's a privilege and a responsibility of confidentiality.
Thank you, Ali. Kevin, what's your experience of the process of reading and scoring applications been like?
I think you can't help but when you kind of read people's submissions that you reflect on your own work and the work of the organizations that you partner with as well. Like that's kind of what I kind of got about and realizing the kind of the breadth of work that people are applying with that's out there, which is like, I think at the beginning of my experience as a peer assessor, it was really, really inspiring to kind of see all these projects and things that people are wanting to put on and wanting to do across this country. And I think that's kind of emboldening. In a lot of ways, I think, yeah, it really emboldened me as an artist to kind of think about context outside of, for me specifically, an East Coast, like metrocentric pattern, or because that's where my communities are. It did eventually, sadly, for me, after the 3 years, it's developed into a little bit more frustrating. I guess I'll put it in those terms, mostly because knowing after a number of times, you realize what what people are missing. Yeah, and there's good projects out there that are just missing a hairline's worth of things that just doesn't cross them across the border. So it sadly for me, it became that experience of being like, oh, this is so good, but it just needed to have this, like, and you spend a lot of time like closely almost yelling at the screen, wanting them to, as you're reviewing it. Are we going to talk about the strategies and tips of managing the work now, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
I eventually, after sitting on a few panels, I've had to develop my own system because I think I had my own problems with the actual portal as well. That's another conversation altogether, but not that I can show anyone this system because it's gone now, but in my specific panels, we're reviewing up to like 120 assessments. So I think for me, it was committing to a certain time frame that I want to kind of operate by, and being able to kind of, how can I split that time? Like you really do have to give yourself a time limit on each application. There's not a lot, but I would often start off with a first introductory glance across all the, not necessarily a deep dive, but just a very quick kind of like, I usually do 3 run-throughs. So I do 1 run-through just to get a broader understanding of where everything is. And I usually split things into third percentile. So I've got a top third, middle third, and a bottom third. So when I kind of go through that process, I usually split it into those 3 sections. And also I usually do it on my own kind of Excel spreadsheet as well. So I can make a comparative understanding of where I'm placing things. Something that I think is really, really important is that I usually print all the criterias out and always have it visible while I'm reading all my assessments. Because that way I don't get confused around my own, because ultimately you are working with criteria and you might have a bias towards things. And I think it's like, for me, the fairness lies on relying on what that criteria is.
Yeah.
Although I think there has been peers that I've worked with who has issues with the criteria itself. So after I go through my first run through, I usually kind of put a lot of my energies in looking at the middle third. I find is really interesting about why I would stick them in the middle, because and then kind of going into a deep dive of looking through people's kind of materials and people's references and support letters as well is really, really important at that point. But I think I had the confidence towards the end to kind of understand that my own judgments are actually quite fair, because they're often on par. They're often with consensus, Yeah. But it does take at least 2 panels for you to get confidence around it.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid if the first panel you are kind of like being like, I don't know if this is the right thing. Yeah, I think that's what I want to put out there.
Yeah, we often watch people's voices grow louder the longer they've assessed with us and the confidence builds. Dane, I saw you thumbing up some of Kevin's comments there.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, what Ali and Kevin has said is very right. My experience was quite similar. I guess there's a couple of things I think I can add. And everyone has their own kind of style. You know, you work out your own way to get through your assessments. The way that I like to do it, and it may be because I come from music, and each art form is a little bit different. But I like to, read the title. What do they want to do? And then I go straight to the support material, which in music is usually a song or two. And that gives me context for going back and reading the application in detail. I feel like I can understand the application having listened to their music. Something that's a little bit more mechanical based is don't leave it to the last day. I usually don't like to do, say, more than 10 or 15 in a day, because if you find that you're starting to blur and not pay attention to detail, you're really not respecting the amount of time and effort that applicant has put in. And if you start to drift, it's time to put it down and walk away for a while. That's just how I like to do it. 10 of a night time, 10 to 15, that's about right for me. Absolutely take notes. So when you're in the grant portal, there's a note section, which is your private section. No one can read that. But then when you're in the meeting, you can go, oh, which one was this again? And go back and look at your notes. And then you're able to actually contribute in an informed way to the discussion. It doesn't have to be big reams of notes, but enough for you to remember what this particular application is. And I guess my last one is, again, a little bit more mechanical, and it's about observing a curve in your scoring. Some people can score a bit high, some people can score a bit low. It's good to observe as you work through a kind of a curve where there's, a large chunk in the middle and a smaller chunk at the bottom and a smaller chunk at the top. That way, you know that your distribution of scoring is like on a curve of these ones at the top really deserve to be there, and these ones in the middle need to make a stronger case in order to get funded. So yeah, they're the bits that I've got. Thanks, Pip.
That's a really good point, Dane, actually, because our team, when we're supporting peers through that scoring process, we spend a lot of time saying not everything's going to get funded. So you need to come to the meeting with a really good sense of what you want to support and what you want to advocate for, because if funding, some of the funding programs will have a success rate of around 17%, which is really heartbreaking because there's lots of great work we can't support. So you have to be able to really get to the heart of what makes an application strong, how it best meets the criteria, and then really advocate in those meetings for those ones to get supported. Which does bring me on to my next question. Does everyone agree in an assessment meeting? And do they change their minds? So Kevin, what's your experience of that been?
No, I don't think everyone agrees necessarily. Although I think it's like, I don't know why even through all my panels, I'm always surprised that, like the top third are the top third. Like I kind of come in there and usually, and it's the outliers that you really got to keep an eye on. The outliers for what is in your kind of like, what is in your higher ranges that isn't kind of getting to other people's places. So that's kind of the big one. And not everyone. And what was the second part of that question again?
And do people change their minds?
I think people really do. I mean, I don't know if this is, I've had other colleagues who've been in other art form groups, and I think it's very different because I was very fortunate. I say fortunate, but I really enjoyed my time with the multi-arts panel, because I think in that panel specifically, everyone did rely on people's discipline knowledge a lot more. And it was an extremely, extremely diverse panel. And I think in that regards, people tended to listen a lot more. And I don't know, and I do often, I was often wonder about other art forms whether it would be the similar context, but perhaps not, because people know each other a lot more. That's the feedback that I've been given from my other colleagues and other who sit on discipline specific panels. But in my panel, yes, people do often change their minds a lot, and I guess the big issue is the fact that you really only have time during deliberations to really make that one argument for that one project, I feel like. like the one, if you want to make the one big vocal argument for something, you only have one of those up your sleeve, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Dane,
how about you?
Yeah, I guess it's good to understand the context in which the discussion happens. Pip is one of our facilitators, and there's a bunch of them. So in the meeting, the facilitator kind of takes control of the direction of the conversation, or if it needs guiding or steering, which keeps it on a path. Yes, there sometimes can be tears in a meeting, and sometimes people will passionately defend or advocate for an application. And that's good. Know that it's in the context of respect as well. Everyone in the room is generally really respectful. And yes, people do change their minds. Often it's based on particular details or specific knowledge. So I come from music. My particular area is contemporary music. I understand jazz, but I don't understand Baroque music very well. And usually there'll be someone in the meeting that does, and I'll usually listen to them and change my mind accordingly if they can make a great case for it.
And Ali, what's been your experience of agreement and mind changing in meetings?
It is true that our voices get louder the more we attend the peer sessions. I learnt to stop being shy because the Australia Council do everything possible to create a safe environment. So once I knew that, I guess that allowed me to be a little bit more passionate about things. It's true what Kevin was saying. I've done some peers for the Literature Councils, literature panels. So that's all focused on literature, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander panels are looking at all art forms. So again, I needed to listen and often be educated by people that had closer knowledge. I think I saw around the room when people were really passionate that a submission came through that was breaking new ground or pushing against the norm or pushing against the popular, or sometimes that a new artist could come up the ranks quite quickly. Yes, I heard great arguments for that. I think personally, I had to learn to ask for more time. Living in regional and remote areas, sometimes I think I know my thinking is a little slower, not because of intelligence, it's just for consideration. And sometimes I would have to ask for a pause until I had completed my thought process. And like I said, at first that was quite daunting, but knowing that the Australia Council provides a safe environment, and then sort of knowing that maybe everyone in the room is in a similar place was quite reassuring.
Yeah,
I actually enjoyed the passionate discussions, because I felt that everyone had brought that total commitment and their heart in and into the room, and that's why we were there. That's why we were.
Yes, my feeling is pretty much all the peers have at one time been an applicant, and they feel the weight of all the work that's gone into someone's application and are treating it with respect. Definitely. I'm curious what you would say to someone who's watching this video who is worried that they don't have the expertise in every part of their sector or every part of their arts practice, Can you speak a bit about how you felt about if you have felt something similar, and what the experience of being one of many peers is like on a panel. Dane, can we start with you?
It's impossible to know the entirety of the art form that you're assessing. It's good to have a broad understanding, and of course everyone comes from, a very specific area usually. I guess I can speak that I come from Tasmania, and being a peer assessor was a bit intimidating for me the first time, because it was kind of like, roll into Sydney, welcome to big time. And now, you're looking at a lot of projects that are, with big budgets and very significant activities involved in them. It's natural to feel a bit intimidated at first, I think, but know that you've been chosen because you have specific knowledge and you've been working in your field enough that the assessment team has chosen you. So that's not for no reason, and bring what you've got and be willing to listen for the things that you don't.
Ali, what would you say to that?
I guess I'm going to answer the question, but in the way, I just learned so much. I probably, when it was first asked to join the room, didn't even really consider myself as an artist of any worth, because I was still in my cathartic stage of practice and just doing what I needed to do. And I'm just going to get you to
So just what would you say to someone who's worried that they don't have the expertise in every part of their sector or art form?
Yeah, so that was definitely me when I walked into the room for the first time. And I remember someone pulling out the chair and saying, "Oh, sit here, sis." I still remember just that little act of kindness. And then knowing probably everyone carries some personal challenge to be in the room.
Did it help you having, you've talked a bit already about being part of a multi-art form panel and having to rely on that knowledge from others.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed with this question. I guess it's bringing back old memories. I think you have to put that aside and embrace the opportunity to improve your own understanding of the arts. Within a short time of being in that room, that self-doubt goes away, and you're engaged in such an interesting conversation. We talked about maybe conflicting arguments and passion. I remember there was always also a lot of humour and a lot of celebration, and I think that was one of the things that maybe where that overwhelm came. I remember initially being so proud to hear of achievements and milestones and the push for resilience using the arts across the nation.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ali. And Kevin, anything else you'd say to someone who is worried that they don't have the expertise?
I think I'm reflecting on one specific panel where there was a young and emerging artist who was invited to be on from Western Australia, who felt really uncomfortable about their level of expertise because they were young and emerging, sitting amongst a lot of professionals who've got a few years underneath their belt. And I remember telling them that that their contribution towards listening to us is just as vital, and for them to be open, because there's still a decision, there's consensus to be made there. So their ability to kind of listen to people's arguments for and against and deciding it is out of their own experience. And often I think if you're invited to a panel, you have sat with a larger context of being an artist. So it's really, really important. And also, I think something that I would kind of also like to say is that like owning what you don't know is really vital towards the consensus making process. You know, like, because it puts you in a really vital position with other artists for you to just ask the really obvious questions. And I feel like that's necessary in making these decisions, is that that sometimes you need either you're that person in the room or someone else in that person in the room who just doesn't know about something and just asks a question that they think is really, really dumb. And I think just to kind of echo what Ali said, it is a very safe space. So asking dumb questions, I think, is absolutely fine. I mean, maybe using the word dumb is really bad, sorry.
No, but I think it's right that I don't think any question is too naive or too, you know, actually, if you're thinking it, I can guarantee you someone else is thinking it.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Or maybe it's the question that no one else is thinking.
Yeah. That
is the specific point to get that submission over the line. And as fresh eyes, often you see things differently. I think you need to trust your inner vision, and the location that you've come from helps to see things differently too.
And I think I'll also just add to that as well. There are Australia Council staff in the meeting. They don't make the decisions about the ranking. That's absolutely the responsibility of the peers. But there will be an arts practice director in the meeting who will have a broad overview of what's going on in the sector and maybe specific knowledge that can add to the conversations. And there'll be other Australia Council staff as well who can provide other background to initiatives or what's happening in an area as well. So you're never entirely on your own. You have a panel of people and staff around as well who help you navigate that process. Can I just ask you sort of what have you learned about your sector from being part of those discussions and reading those applications? Ali, what have you learned?
I think I learned that I'm pretty deadly. It
I'd echo that.
Improved my confidence. I think the experience in the rooms revealed my purpose that I wasn't revealing to myself. I definitely enjoyed stronger analytical thinking. I think my personal goals were a little bit higher as that confidence grew. I think I've always enjoyed a challenge, so new challenges for myself. And, you know, it was so stressful to fill out grant applications. And often I would get halfway through and just wouldn't complete because, you know, I just didn't feel I had the skills, or I could produce the art, but I couldn't articulate the background of it. Knowing how to do that is so empowering, and it's a wonderful skill to take back to you know, smaller communities, regional and remote communities, and share a little bit of the ripple effect of that learning. Yeah, just the removal of stress and the confidence to be in the pool of applications again is a wonderful achievement. I really recommend the journey to anyone.
Kevin, do you want to add to that? And perhaps we focus on what you've learned rather than about yourself as well as the sector.
Yeah, I think I've learned the sheer amount, I learned more about the sheer amount of labor it takes to go through an application process. Not just the labor of necessarily applying, but the labor of support that any artist has to build around themselves. that and especially, you know, with the kind of like limited cutoff line, it's just like knowing what that is now makes me a bit more wiser about what it means to enter an application process. And I think something that I'm like still learning, I guess I'm gonna call it a process of learning, is actually like what people are up to. That's the kind of great, that's the really, really great continual learning that has happened from that, is that like, is that going through the peer assessment process has opened my eyes up. Again, I think just to kind of go back to my previous point of like things that are outside of like East Coast Metro centric arts. And in a way that like, by going through this process, I know who to follow across this country that I never would have otherwise been able to, would have never, sadly, unfortunately, like entered my radar. And I think that just kind of gives me more of a wider kind of idea of where I can practice art in this country. Yeah.
Dane.
Both of those answers are excellent, and I agree with them very much so. I guess a couple of little things I can add is that, you know, the first couple of times I'm like, I didn't know anything about art music, and I didn't understand the language and the process of how people make it. And that was really eye-opening for me. I learned about the different models for touring work in different genres, and I guess more broadly, you know, the difference in pay rates and expectations, and like the language in working in different art forms. There's whole different vocabularies if you're looking at, say, dance or music or theatre. And Kevin, you're excellent at the intersection of this, where you can actually notice, particularly in a multi-round, where people are bringing together the different languages of their art forms, and the way that crosses over, it's kind of this beautiful combination of ways of approaching art making. And yeah, I learned a lot from that. I guess also, you know, when you read it, you really pick up on how to make a strong case for your own applications in the future. And it can kind of be a combination of your passionate language and commitment to your practice, but also the laser focus on knowing exactly how you're going to get done what you're proposing. And if you can get both of those right, I think it stands you in a really good, strong stead. Yeah.
Fabulous. So I'm just going to go and have a quick look at the questions that have been submitted. I'm aware that we've had lots of answers happening in the background. So there's an interesting question here I might throw to the panel, actually. Peers in this webinar have spoken about other peers selected in the past who didn't know about what they are assessing or weren't confident. I'm confused and wondering why these people had applied to be peers. I might start giving that an answer. I think the experience is a bit, when you're first doing a peer assessment process, it's a bit rabbit in headlights as you get your head around the system and the process and all of the things that you kind of have to do. And it can be quite intimidating in a panel assessment meeting for the first time, you know, around other people who might be quite senior in your field, to just kind of feel grounded and to develop a bit of confidence about raising your voice. So I think that's why we've said people tend to warm up a little bit over the times that they've assessed, and grow in that confidence. And, you know, there is a process of in the meeting, the first thing we do is we show the initial rank based on everyone's individual scores from home. And that's a really kind of a really important part of the process about locating the way you think and the way that you assess against the way the other panelists think and assess. So, and then there are panels where the breadth of that area of practice is so huge, particularly if it's multi-art form, that depending on the scale of applications that are coming in, it might be things that you're less comfortable assessing. And I think back to some panels, for example, Dane was talking about, I feel confident, I don't know how to do art music, or, you know, the difference of the way contemporary music band tours and the way they earn their money is so fundamentally different from the way a composer earns their money. And so quite oftentimes there's a bit of learning happening, live learning that's happening about the way different parts of the same sector operate. But what I might do is throw that over to Kevin. Do you want to reflect on what it means for those people who perhaps are a little less confident coming into that process?
I mean, just to kind of reflect on my personal journey, I didn't like, because you're originally assessing the panels by yourself in front of a screen, you don't really have any context. I mean, I felt like I did build confidence during the kind of process of reviewing submissions, when I started noticing names of people that I knew. Obviously, I couldn't assess it because it was a conflict of interest. But when you start discovering people in your own community applying, you start going like, oh, okay, like I know everyone. Like I know actually a sizable contingent of people who are applying now. So that, for me, that builds a bit of confidence. But also the second set of confidence that I got was when I first went to went to a physical meeting, or went to my first meaning of actually, and then when I think there was this magical moment when you guys collate everything and look at the top third, and I think I built a lot of confidence when I looked at my percentile, looked at what the collation, and it was like, oh, this matches up, like somewhat matches up, like, so that means that like I wasn't necessarily shooting in, like shooting in the dark, or just completely off the chart compared to everyone else. So I think that was really good in terms of how I felt. But you definitely you're definitely working in the dark a little bit at the beginning. I think that's just something that there's no way around it.
Yeah. Ali, anything you want to add about that?
I think the Australia Council, they're not picking people off the street. People that come that might, like we've mentioned, they haven't got enough knowledge. Knowledge comes from many places. And so the people that are inviting the peers are looking more broadly for the assessors to come from just one place. There's a cultural place, there's a multicultural place, there's a youth perspective, there's the different ethics, and that's what makes the conversations in the room so interesting and thorough, because people are bringing different aspects of their own knowledge and practice into the room. So that those responses earlier, I think they were about our own growth, and I would like to think that everyone that comes through the peer assessment group is there because they have something to offer.
Yeah. And Dane, anything else to add on that?
Just a little bit that if you are selected, you get a peer handbook, which has a lot of information in it. And also our protocols. So, if it's working with First Nations or people with disability, there's some very clear and helpful protocols around those things. And I guess lastly, when you are doing your initial assessments on your own at home with your computer, if you find you've got a gap, you can make time to go and do a little bit of research. So it's, you're not on the spot straight away. You've got time to do a bit of digging if you feel like you need to.
And come with the questions you want to ask of your other peers. Actually, when you get there, you can see who's on the panel, what other experience you can draw on as well. Yeah.
Can I just add, when I felt a little overwhelmed, I rang the staff at the Australia Council, and have always felt supported and open to pick up the phone and just talk through my own little fears so they can get back to the task at hand.
We've got another question I just wanted to check in on. Does cultural diversity mean actually working in the sector, or could it be a reflection of your own personal cultural background? And I'd say very actively both. We want to see people with really diverse backgrounds, diverse arts practices, cultural practice. We're looking for our peers to reflect the people working, making, experiencing art. so I would, yeah, and certainly when you register in our system, we ask you to share your cultural background if you feel comfortable doing that. Was there anything the peers wanted to say about that?
No, I think.
Yeah, it's just vital. It is vital having peers who are representative of Australia and the artists and the people experiencing art. So yes, please do. There is a question about what percentage of peer applications received is likely to be approved to the pool. Kind of depends on how many nominations we get. We've had a pool of about 700 peers for the last 3 to 4 years. It's not all of those peers will get their chance to assess in this current term, but you do need a lot in there in order to ensure capacity for particular areas of practice, or capacity for people who are too busy to assess in a particular closing date. So, you know, for every peer that we have on a panel, and for a closing date, we'll average around 100 to 110 peers that we'll be working with, and that will be we'll have contacted 200 plus to be able to get those 100 peers. So we do need to kind of have a large number in the pool. But we also need the right mix of people. And so, you know, a lot of what we'll be doing is sort of making sure we've got a really good spread for each of those areas, for each of those arts practice panels, and a good representative spread of skills and backgrounds and so on. So I can't give you an exact percentage because I don't know yet, but we're looking at maybe around 600 for this panel, for this pool, I should say. So we'll see how we go. There is also a final question which we might just answer and start as we start to close the session. There was a question: are there any tips that you would give to an emerging artist who are thinking about applying to be a peer assessor for the first time? So I might give you 1 or 2 tips each before we close the session. So this is tips to give an emerging artist who are thinking about applying to be a peer for the first time. Dane.
Yeah, good question. I guess when you make your application, show your unique voice. That's the important thing to shine through when the assessment officers are putting together the pool. It's a broad spread, age, experience, where you come from geographically, your cultural background. In your application, if you can make you and your practice shine through as something that's a unique voice to have at the table, then I think that's the best way to make your application.
Ali, what would you say to an emerging artist thinking of becoming a peer?
Yeah, I agree with Dane. You know, uniqueness is a wonderful thing, and I think if you're considering it, you know, do apply. It's an amazing chapter of an arts journey. You don't know where it will lead. If it's not this time and you grow a little bit more, you know, apply next time. Yeah, it's an amazing chapter of an arts journey.
Thank you. And Kevin?
I think to kind of take your time to think about your art forms and the communities that you would like to advocate for. I think that was for me as well, going as a peer assessor, like also understanding like the work that I've made and how it's in what communities and what art forms I'm really like trying to channel in that. And I think that was really helpful for me when I applied to be a peer assessor. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, all of you, and apologies to those whose questions we haven't had a chance to get to. As I said, we will update our frequently asked questions with the questions that we have answered. I can see this is a good 27 or so that have been in there, and in addition, we'll endeavour to answer the other ones that have been proposed to us. But also, you have our contact details in the chat if you want to get in touch and talk to us directly as well. So just to finish up, if having heard all of this, you're excited and interested to become a peer, please complete the application form in our application management system by the 2nd of February. If you haven't used our system before, you will need to register for an account first. So allow a day or two max for us to process that and get you the links so that you can log into the system. The application form asks you to provide details about your experience and the experience you have in terms of different areas of arts practice, working with different groups of people, working in different locations, and all of that information helps us link your skills and knowledge to the applications that we receive. We also ask you to nominate which arts practice panels you think you could assess for, a minimum of 1, a maximum of 4. Don't feel the need to add more if there's only really 1 or 2 that you want to assess for. That's absolutely fine. And we also ask you to provide contact details for at least 1 referee. And that's if we need to talk to them just to understand a little bit more about your experience. We hope to notify you of the outcomes by the end of April. And as I said at the beginning, you'd be assessing for applications for the September closing date onwards. We do usually receive many more applications than we can support. As I said, I don't know the exact success rate, but please don't be discouraged from applying because of that. And don't be discouraged if we don't use you this time, because if we know you are interested, we may be in contact if other relevant opportunities arise. There is actually a box that you can tick on the application form that says contact me if other opportunities come up. So for example, to be an industry advisor for another initiative that we offer. And then we've already got all of that great information about your experience and knowledge, and we can match you to those opportunities that come up as well. So yeah, please don't be discouraged. We're sort of managing that weird space of enough peers that we can confidently form panels, but not too many peers that we can't give people the opportunity to assess. And I think I did see a question just sort of pop up about how many times people need to apply before they're selected as a peer. It varies. If your skills match what we need, first time. If they're perhaps a little less relevant, then it might be about you developing experience over years, and you might be a better fit the next time around. So if having heard all of this isn't the opportunity for you, you might know someone who would make a great peer. So please, can you tap them on the shoulder and offer to be their referee? So that's something that you can help them with as well. So I'm going to end it there, the webinar there. Obviously, the conversation can continue with the assessment team. Please get in touch with us if you have any questions, and keep an eye on the frequently asked questions on the website. And get in touch if you have any problems with completing your application form. We want to hear from you. Massive thank you to Ali, Kevin and Dane for their participation. It's always such a privilege to spend time with our peers and talk through your experiences. So thanks for joining us today. Many thanks to my Australia Council colleagues who've made all of this possible. And to Dave and Amber, our Auslan interpreters who've been working hard. And thanks to all of you for joining us, for your great questions and your interest in peer assessment. Please get in touch if you have questions. Thanks once again, and have a great afternoon. We look forward to reading your applications soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.